People want fairy tales. It's messed up. It's messed up. I don't like it. Hi, and welcome to the video diary of a CSA and DV survivor responding to Virginia Giuffre's Nobody's Girl. Chapter 19, Down Under. When I picture myself during my first few days in Australia, I have to laugh. I was standing behind the stove in my in-laws' kitchen, learning how to make coffee the Italian way, one strong cup at a time. I pour water into a tiny silver percolator, then spoon finely ground coffee into the sieve-like reservoir, through which the hot water will soon flow. It's a cozy scene, except for what I'm wearing, a skimpy undershirt and Daisy Duke cutoff shorts, with my thong underwear protruding from the waistband. To see me, you might think I'm trying to show off my body, but that isn't right. While in Epstein's employ, I'd been encouraged to wear clothes that made me look even younger than I was. Now, no longer Epstein's captive, I was a wife, a grown woman, but I still felt, and dressed, like a teenage girl. I didn't have the slightest idea how an adult version of me should look. I can't overestimate how much she had to learn how to live an entirely new life. She had a very specific skill set, deliberately so. A very specific way of relating to other people, deliberately so.
I have a very specific skill set.
And now she was in a totally different environment where she knew nothing. This is one of many reasons a lot of abuse victims, especially chronic abuse victims who had it start early, get stuck in these cycles.
Go back to the shadow. You shall not pass!
I know it's the main reason I stayed with my ex long term. I went out, I tried to get involved with normal people, and I tried to do normal things, and either my body or my mind or my emotions failed me. Meanwhile, being told what to do, right down to what clothes I wore, that was easier. For Virginia, this even extended to the bedroom, where her first instinct was to treat her husband in roughly the same way that she treated Epstein. When she did this, she describes her husband's reaction as, "He took hold of my wrist. You don't have to do that," he said gently. "That's not right. Lay down with me instead." I did as he asked. I never brought a washcloth to bed again. But while this should have been a relief, it also left me confused. That act, however demeaning, had been expected of me for so long, and I'd been praised for it. Now that I wasn't doing it anymore, I was unsure what to do with myself instead. It was difficult just to relax. This is a brilliant insight. I actually hadn't even thought about that myself, but one of the nice things about abusers is that they tell you exactly what to do, or at least our abusers did. They have very low tolerance for deviation, but they're very clear about what they want. So if you just do it over and over again, you know you'll be okay. There's far less worry about doing the wrong thing when you're very clear about what the right and wrong things are. And there's comfort in that, especially if, like us, your childhood abuse left you with the idea that you're not worth anything, you can't make good or right decisions, and any action selected on your own is necessarily going to be wrong. Being told to just be free, choose for yourself, is petrifying, mortifying, and there's going to be intense fear that you'll do it wrong because you don't know these new rules, and you know exactly how painful it can be when you fail to follow the rules correctly. Alright, soon the couple moved out of his parents' place and set out living on their own, but there was trouble. The walls of our tiny two-bedroom second-floor walk-up were thin. I remember our lovely Indian next-door neighbors had a new baby whose cries we heard at all hours. I'm also sure they heard Robbie and me fighting. Too often, usually after drinking too much, we'd go at it hammer and tong. "Why didn't I clean the house?" he'd yell, when he was working so hard. "Why couldn't he come home earlier?" I'd scream, when he knew I was so lonely. Sometimes he'd call me on his lunch break and I'd just be waking up. "What are you doing, just faffing around?" he'd asked, using Aussie slang for wasting time. "Jenna, you are acting like a child." That made me angry, but the truth was that in some ways I still was a child. Alright, so this passage, it makes me not like her husband. He's expecting her to have skills that she had no time, no resources, and no guidance to gain. In fact, she had been trained in the exact opposite way, to be a forever obedient companion to Epstein and whomever Epstein gave her to. A person who spent their lives being enculturated into that, being trained for that. They're not going to be able to be a fully functioning adult. They're not going to be able to do all of the chores you want in exactly the way that you want them to. And yelling at them is not going to get them more independent. It might seem familiar to them. It might make them feel more sure of what you want. But if you actually want independence, if you actually want growth, if you actually want a healthy human adult, that's not going to get it for you. She needed emotional support. She needed understanding. She needed to slowly build up her skills as a functional, independent adult. Her husband is not helping her do that. He's just blaming her and shaming her and yelling at her for not having the skills that were deliberately stripped from and withheld from her. It's messed up. It's messed up. I don't like it. Oh, and yeah, you see, she's even saying that she was still a child. She's accepting the terms of the abuse and applying it to herself like she always has. Yes, that's right. She shouldn't do that. He makes good points. But I want to be clear, I'm not blaming Virginia for this. That's not something she chose. It's just the hand she was dealt. She talks about one argument they had where he had given her some money to buy some furniture for the house because they'd saved up a little bit. She came back with an Xbox game console instead. They argued about it. She defended herself. But, as she puts it, what I didn't say, because I was ashamed to admit it, was that the thought of going to a furniture store alone had paralyzed me. I didn't know how to shop for furniture because I'd never seen anybody do it. I was afraid of doing it wrong, so I'd blown all our money on something that I knew how to buy. A toy. This is more of the same theme we were just talking about. She has the skills that she's been taught. She has the abilities that she has been allowed to have, and she lacks the abilities that she was discouraged from having, even forbidden from having. I still struggle with the same thing. I can buy groceries, but anything else, I feel like I need permission, I need guidance, I need help, because it isn't really just an experience, it's also the bone-deep lack of confidence in our own judgment that comes not just from being told we're worthless, not just from being treated like we're worthless, but from knowing that we made such horrible decisions in the past, from knowing that we choose bad people, that we don't judge character well, and that we do the wrong things, and that we hurt ourselves and others by those means. That kind of gets irrationally generalized as a broad-based disbelief in our competence to do just about anything independently. It's learned hopelessness. The technical term is learned hopelessness. And it sucks. It's hard to overcome. You can pretty much only overcome it with gradual exposure therapy that helps you do more and more things. But again, that doesn't come from yelling at someone. That doesn't come from blaming someone. It comes by gradually giving them more and more tasks of more and more difficulty and more independence to do as time goes on. You know, like competent parents are supposed to do with their children. People like us, people raised in a spotty, neglectful, abusive way, and people who also fall into those patterns as an adult because it's the only thing they know how to do, we're problematic. We take a lot of work and a lot of patience and a lot of kindness to come into flower. Her husband didn't give her that. As we see on later pages, he didn't even understand the emotional repercussions were not under her control. Starting on page 181, While I'd been honest with my husband about the range of damaging experiences I'd endured, I think he expected that the further away I got from those incidents, the better I'd feel. Instead, the opposite seemed to be happening. Memories I'd tamped down for years were now coming up, unbidden, in vivid detail. Disturbing images would pop into my head during the day. The black leather studded collar Epstein had choked me with. The greedy, cruel look on the Prime Minister's face as he watched me beg for my life. I was haunted by nightmares, my abusers looming over me about to pounce, and me unable to get away. Frequently, I was jolting myself awake, with my side of the bed soaked in sweat. I hated waking Robbie up, so I'd just cuddle closer to him. "You okay?" he'd mumble. "Yeah, just another one of those dreams," I'd say, as he wrapped his arms around me and dozed off again. Nevertheless, I was not yet willing to acknowledge how much pain I was in. On page 183, she continues with this theme. Often I felt as if I were moving 2 steps forward, 1 step back. As I put distance between my abusive past and my non-abusive present, I could at times feel waves of peaceful energy and hope. But then that serenity did something I wished it wouldn't. It was as if my feeling safe cleared a path for some of the most awful memories, ones that I'd locked away for years, to come to the forefront of my mind. When you're fighting for survival, you don't process trauma, you bury it. Well, now that I was surrounded by love, all that ugliness had decided it had been buried long enough. This is classic PTSD, and she's quite right about what happens when you're actually going through it. You're focused on surviving. It's one thing after another, so the pain just keeps getting cataloged by your brain as your body tries desperately to keep you breathing, to keep whatever torment is around at bay, or at least minimized. But once you're safe, your body knows it has to process it because you can't keep living that way. This is a long and involuntary process that requires patience, and she's not getting that. The real heartbreaking thing is that when you've gone through these kinds of things, you're going to be blaming yourself anyway. She clearly, at least in part, blamed herself for being unable to resolve severe trauma on her own. And yeah, I went through the same thing. I couldn't understand why I was suddenly in a safe place, and suddenly I was dealing with all the mental illness that didn't even seem to be there when I was younger. Sure, I was sick then, but nothing like I was once I got to safety. And I've had multiple people be impatient with me for that as well. One ex actually said, "I just planned on going up in a white horse and rescuing you, but you're not rescued." No. The monsters are inside the body. They don't just live outside of us, and we don't leave them just by changing where we are. We remember. Our nervous system has been trained. And it takes time, it takes patience, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes wisdom and guidance to recontextualize all of that and become our healthiest, happiest selves. It doesn't just happen because the danger's far away. Our nervous system doesn't know that. I don't like her husband. I don't. And on 182, between that, she talks about a self-harm incident. One day, Robbie came home from work and found me sitting on the floor in the corner of our apartment, surrounded by blood and broken glass. I had been cutting myself, not trying to kill myself, but instead using the clarity of inflicting my own pain to quiet my raging demons. Robbie took one look at me and called his mother. He told me later that he could just tell by the look in my eyes that this was a mom moment. When Nina arrived, she swooped in like a bosomy angel, kicking the shards of glass away and taking me into her arms. She must have held me for an hour, rocking me, telling me it would be all right. Then she took me to the bathtub, stripped off my clothes, and tenderly washed me as if I were her own child. Once again, Robbie's parents were giving me what I'd been missing since I was a tiny girl. That's the right reaction. What his mom did. I hid my self-injury when I was doing it. No one was aware of it until years later, after I'd stopped and I was confident I was not going to start again. And when my mom saw the scars, she didn't respond with that compassion. She didn't think, oh, she needs help, I need to be kind. No. She said, "What did you do to yourself?" Well, I did what Virginia said. I was taking control of my pain by inflicting it myself, which was better than the completely uncontrolled pain that was overriding my entire nervous system and making it impossible to function. A lot better. I wish everyone was like Nina in this story. I wish people knew that providing care and help and love and making people feel seen and not judging and hating people for trying to help themselves, albeit in unhealthy ways, was the norm. I wish we knew better. After that incident, she says, I would have understood if Robbie had felt angry about how utterly I was falling apart. Why? How is that understandable? But he was more sad than mad. Sometimes he'd reference the roller coaster that we were riding together by joking that when we first got married, he didn't know me from a bar of soap. But he was usually hugging and kissing me when he said something like that. He constantly told me how lucky he felt to have found me. Still, I knew he was frustrated, and so was I. I guess I like that he tried. What really astounds me about this passage is that she expected him to be angry about her carrying with her the involuntary mental and emotional effects of what she's been through. Why would your husband be angry at you for something you didn't choose, you don't want, and that hurts you more than it hurts them? I know it happens. I know it does. My mother reacted that way. The ex who saved me from my abusive ex also reacted that way. People want fairy tales. They want victims in distress that they can come in and save, and then when they take the damsel in distress home and put them in a safe spot, they expect her to be grateful like a puppy that's been recovered from the pound and immediately fell in intense and unending love with you. They want the happily ever after that comes in the fairy tale. But these things change us. They change our minds, our endocrine systems, our hormone systems. Even autoimmune diseases are a real possibility of going through these sorts of experiences, especially in a chronic, long-term sense. None of it goes away overnight. It's a process, and it's not an easy process. Every step towards progress should be applauded, not a source of frustration or anger. And a person who has been through it certainly shouldn't feel guilty, shouldn't feel like they aren't doing enough, shouldn't feel like they're a failure because the natural results of what happened to them are manifesting. It doesn't make any sense. But it's horribly common. I've been through it too. We need to understand abuse and its effects a lot better as a society than we do. That's the lesson here. We see all the failures of that in chapter 19 of Virginia Giuffre's book. And I wish we would take the time as a society to sit down, to think about it, to restructure our expectations, to make healing easier, and to make the pain stop a little bit sooner. Okay, I'm just doing the one chapter this time, so it's been great talking to you. I hope you have a nice day, and any PTSD you may be dealing with is not so bad, at least temporarily. May we all reprocess and heal. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Are you done making mouth noises? You're a good boy. He's not done yet.